All right, we'll try that again. Welcome, everybody. This is a hearing for the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Grimsby. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First, I'm going to do a little public announcement regarding live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are streamed live by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. Everybody present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed, and voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. I'd like to first introduce the committee because we're in a Zoom format. I'm just going to introduce the 5 members of the committee. So myself as chair, Kevin Antonitis, and we have with us this evening Danielle Beck. If you can just wave. There's Danielle. Adam Mottershead. Adam. Dylan Bailey, Dylan, and Herb Nobes. Herb. So that's the 5 committee members. We have 2 staff with us this evening. We have Nancy Simon, our secretary treasurer, and Walter Basic is the planner attending tonight. So does first item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. I think we have 2 disclosures for the second item on the agenda. We have 2 items on the agenda. So for the second one, I've declared a conflict of interest regarding the hospital applications, as I'm currently chair of the Hospital Foundation. And Adam, did you wish to state you had filed something as well?
Yes, I'm declaring a non-pecuniary interest because I've actually had input into the design process with the hospital.
Okay, so after the first application then, which is at 259 Main Street, we're going to do a brief recess. I'm going to step down as chair, excuse myself from the meeting, and Herb will take over as chair for the second application. So just to briefly go through the procedures, we'll have the application number called. The Secretary Treasurer, Nancy, will read the application and any correspondence or a synopsis of all the correspondence that we've received on it. We'll then have the applicant make their presentation if they wish to, or elaborate on it, or expand, or maybe respond to some of the comments and questions that were raised in the correspondence. Okay, and then we'll open it up to questions first for the 5 committee members. So they'll be given an opportunity first, and then we'll open it up to members of the audience that would like to speak or comment on the application. And just because of the number of delegates here, we just remind you that to keep your comments brief and concise. And if you're going to say something that's similar to somebody before you, perhaps do a brief synopsis, say, yes, I concur with that comment, or I echo those comments or sentiments. If we want to give everybody an opportunity to speak, but we just don't want it to be a repetitive thing where everybody's saying the exact same thing. Now, if we can start with the approval of the minutes. So minutes of the previous meeting held on November 24th. We have a motion to approve by Herb. Do we have a seconder? Adam? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, if any, was carried. Okay, then the first application this evening, we're just going to now excuse the delegates for the second application now, right? Put them into the waiting room.
I believe there's also a resolution to approve the delegates for this evening.
Okay. Where is that resolution? We have a resolution to approve the delegates for this evening.
Yes, you have it.
Motion to approve. Danielle, seconder. Dylan, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, if any, was carried. Okay, so now we'll get on to the first application, but in the meantime, we'll just do we'll put the delegates for the second application into the waiting room, and we'll be back hopefully in a few minutes. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I think we've got, that's it, right? All right, so the first application is, I'm looking for it now, just give me a second. 259 Main Street East. Randy and Rebecca Mullins.
Yes.
So this is application A18-20 by Dagmar Shindemi on behalf of Randy and Rebecca Mullins for 259 Main Street East. The application is to permit a variance for the use of the permitted term bank to include the office use of Desjardins Bank as it pertains to financial services, including investments, lending, and insurance, and the use of the term bank is not defined under bylaw 14-45 as amended. With respect to correspondence, Public Works Department had no comment. The Region of Niagara had no comment. They said that any concerns that they might have could be dealt with at the site plan stage if requested. If Devan could please bring up the PowerPoint presentation. I believe Rebecca and Randy would like to give their presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, folks. I'm going to let my wife drive on this. And then next slide, please.
There we go. Okay, so it's currently deemed low density and it's approved for the use of banking. Just to give you a little bit of information, the current owners purchased this property in 2005, and it is being used for commercial and residential use currently. Her husband is a chiropractor and he uses the main floor for his practice. So that's currently what's happening for this property. If you could advance to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So I know that it's not defined in terms of the bylaw as Nancy had mentioned, but you know, if you look up the definition in making loans, so one of the misnomers for our agency, as we call it, and owned by Desjardins Bank, is that we don't just do insurance, we actually take deposits in the form of investments. So we do RSPs, RESPs, LIFs, RIFs, TFSAs. We also do loans in terms of car loans, recreational vehicle loans. We do small business loans, and we do RSP loans, and we do insurance. So based on the services that we offer, you know, deemed financial services, this does fall within the definition of a bank as far as the dictionary is concerned. If you want to advance to the next slide. So proposed use, I think it's really important for everyone to understand that we're going to keep everything as similar as it is now. There's very little changes that will be made. In fact, the only changes that will be made are 2 doors in the interior of the main floor to kind of segregate the office entrance. Really, nothing else will be changed. Something that we did find out after I did this presentation was that the whole entire main floor was for commercial use currently. The only reason they stopped using part of the main floor was because they cut down on their staff because he's winding down his business, so to speak. So there will be no external modifications. The signing that's already on the building, if you've seen it, will remain. We will use what's already there. I have 6 employees in total. 5 will be there full time. 1 will be working from home. The MLS listing did list 10 spaces, but really we only need 8 for what it is that we're going to do. The 5 employees, a client parking space, and as per bylaw, 2 residential for the upper unit. Now we have very, very little clients that actually come into the office, which is interesting for being a bank, but you know, the world is changing, and this was even prior COVID. We are a financial institution that does the majority of things online. So we actually have a lot of things sent via OneSpan for signing. We don't require people to sign for their loans. We don't require them to be physically in the office to take their insurance or do their mutual funds. We can do everything virtually now based on electronics. So that we have, I would say, I put no more than 5 clients, but to be honest and realistic, I would bet we have no more than 2 a week. The next slide, please. So we opened up in Grimsby in 2018, and we love being in Grimsby. We're exactly 200 meters from the proposed location now. So we're actually in the building that's right beside the Grimsby Animal Hospital in the, I would call it the basement floor, let's say. And you know, we do support local, we advertise local, we donate local. We used to do the local events like the Grimsby Home Show and all that kind of stuff pre-COVID, and we want to continue to do that in the future. The next slide, please. So this just shows you a schematic of how it is today. There is a door at the front, there is a door at the back. You'll see that there's a wheelchair access ramp at the back that they were currently using and we will continue to use. The staff will enter through the back, the client will come through the front. There is also a side door for the residential unit as well as the front door. There is more than ample space for 5 parking spots in the back. And then there is room for 3 parking spots on the side coming off Park Road. And then, you know, when you see those 5 spots in the front, you'll see there's ample room for someone to reverse without having to reverse on Main Street, which could be a hazard. But there's more than ample room for them to reverse on the current driveway, parking lot, whatever you want to call it, to be able to turn themselves around before pulling off onto the main road. The next slide, please. So this was just showing you, we actually took real cars. I know I did a schematic with the logos, but this is real cars. You can see the amount of space that we have. In fact, if you look at the far left, that's 1 parking spot. With the arrow, if you look at the far right, you'll see that's actually 2 cars parked tandem. It's not because we'll be parking tandem. It's just to show you the amount of actual room that allots for on that space. And then there is a video in the bottom right-hand corner that will actually show you a car pulling out and shows you that it reverses before hitting the sidewalk and is still on the lot itself without causing any issues or causing any concerns for the person reversing. And the last, I think maybe one more slide. Yep. This is the actual main floor layout. So this was actually incorrect. And because I found out after the fact that I labeled it new business use, they're in the far right circle, well, red square. And it's actually being used for that now. Like I said, the only reason they stopped using that per se, they put a table there, was because he cut down on his staff and is actually kind of winding down his practice. But what you can see there in the back is what he's currently using now as he winds down. And that's 2, I guess you would call it maybe 2 back rooms. And then the front is the entranceway with stairs leading up. And then there's a kitchen there, which will be residential use. And that's all I have. Questions, concerns?
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee members? Herb?
There we go. Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, on the plan, the floor plan of the main floor, it shows a residential unit on the ground floor. Is that on the, if you're looking at the building from Main Street, is that on the right-hand side at the front? And if so, they have the access through the gate on the right-hand side and in the side door? Then also your access for barrier-free for this bank proposal, where is that going to be?
That's at the rear of the building.
So the 2 doors, so when you go, I don't know if we can go back to the last slide there, but I did label, sorry, I'm just looking at my picture here. I did label where the 2 doors, they're drawn with pen. It's 2 doors there when you come in the front. There are stairs that go up. To the left, you go into the, let's say the first office. Sorry, it's the very last slide, thank you. So I drew there in pen. I can't show you there, but see where it says new commercial use, which really isn't new. There are two doors there drawn in pen. Those are the only 2 doors that we need to add to the current situation. Nothing else is going to change. Exactly as it is exactly how we will use it.
Where's Main Street on this drawing? At the top?
At the very top, correct.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So where it says existing residential, that is going to be eliminated then on the ground floor?
So that is so the main part there where it says kitchen, that's current for residential use if they would like to use it. And quite honestly, it will be my son that's likely going to be living in the upper unit. So my son will have access to that kitchen. It doesn't need to be locked. From a banking perspective, by law, there have to be locks on that door, which is why we're putting in those 2 doors to separate the commercial space from that current residential use.
Thank you. Any further questions, Herb?
Yes. I was just, if this area that is labeled kitchen and residential use, if that's going to stay as a kitchen residential use, that's not part of the commercial project. So the only access to the commercial portion of the building is through the rear, up the barrier-free ramp and in through the back doors?
Correct. That's how staff will enter the commercial space.
How about people that are going to be using the facility, your clients?
So the client will come in through they can either come through the back door or they can come through the front door.
The front door, does it not go into that residential area?
That is a common foyer. The kitchen is in the back portion of that front piece.
But it's not going to be separated from the rest of that foyer. Is that correct? Or is it going to be separated?
I'm not sure I understand the question. My apologies.
The kitchen and the foyer are all part of the residential portion of the building?
Correct.
So it's not commercial?
No.
So your clients will be coming from the rear, up the ramp and into your commercial banking
Correct.
facility?
Correct.
Okay,
We have a rear foyer.
okay. So is there going to be site plan on this project?
Walter, I think that's a recommendation.
Yeah, the recommendation that we put forward. You can hear me, right? Okay, the recommendation that we put forward was primarily as a result of there was a misunderstanding when the application was initially circulated. It was our understanding that the proposed use had a need for 10 parking spaces in addition to the parking that would be required for the residential use. So as a result of that understanding at the time, the memo was written on that basis, and we thought that there would be a need to reorganize the parking on the site to ensure that a proper amount of parking is being provided for the proposed use above and beyond what is required by the zoning bylaw. Based on the new information that has been provided by the applicant, we don't feel a site plan is necessary. However, Member Nobes' concerns regarding the residential commercial split, I believe that will be addressed through the building permit process. There is a requirement through the building code to, if there are changes being made, to conform to the building code with regard to fire separations, access, and all that stuff. So that would be addressed through that process, if I understand your concerns correctly.
Thanks, Walter. Herb, does that answer your question? I mean, but it sounds like there already is barrier-free access. It's just in the back right now. Is that correct?
Yes. And that's what we use today. That's why there's a ramp that's built at the back. It's exactly how him and his clients used to enter into that commercial space. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to do. That's why there's concrete all along the side as well.
Mr. Chair.
Herb? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair. My concern is that the access to the rear needs to have a barrier out front so the cars do not park and block the access to the rear of the building. So is there going to be curb stones placed so that people have access to that walkway? And because right now, a person can park right up tight against that fence that gives access to the rear of the building. And so no one would have access to the rear. That's all my question.
Well, we wouldn't.
Thank you, Herb.
Sorry, go ahead.
Rebecca?
Sorry, my apologies. Go ahead.
Nope.
Okay.
No, he was done. If you wanted to respond.
Yep. So the gate on the far left, so there is a gate on each side of the property. The right-hand gate would be used for the residential unit. The gate on the left-hand side, which would be used for client use, would we would leave that space open, and that would be the client's parking space, so that the client, as soon as they park, they have access to that the gate would be open, and they follow that pathway around the back, and it leads them right to the door and the wheelchair ramp if they need it.
And our plan is to put signage there indicating that that is client parking.
Correct.
So it's very clear.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee members? Is there any delegates on this application at all, Nancy? None? All right, then do I have a motion on this application?
In the folder.
Did we read the correspondence?
You're in the red folder.
Planning?
Red folder. Red folder.
Oh, sorry. Bear with me here. The correspondence, we did read through it, right? So do I have a motion then to approve the application as presented? Danielle moves, seconder. Adam? Oh, you had a question?
Sorry. There is still, sorry, through the chair, there is still the condition that a site plan application be required. Can I request that that condition be removed based on Mr. Basic's previous comments regarding the parking?
Yes, you
So I would,
can.
my motion would be then to approve it without that condition.
Okay, and did you still
I'd agree
second
with
that,
that.
Adam? Okay, seconder without, so amended. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye on the amended motion. Opposed, if any, was carried. So it was approved, but there is a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. So thank you very much for attending.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so now we're just going to go through a little recess here while we switch chairs. I'm going to leave the room, as is Adam, I believe, and Herb's going to take over, and then they'll open up for the last application of the evening. Thanks, everybody.
Adam and Kevin, I'm just going to put your names in the waiting room.
Well, I'm gonna
Okay, thank
sign
you.
out. So, Herb, you want, this is the only motion, there's only one motion.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining again. We're just taking a moment break just to switch chairs, and then we'll be right with you. So bear with us. yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, can everyone hear me? Just either nod their hand or raise their hand, or nod their head or raise it. Okay, thank you. So this portion of the meeting is regarding application A19-20. Will the secretary please read the application?
Yes, so this is application A19-20 on behalf of Hamilton Health Science Corporation. The application is to facilitate the construction of a new 4-story hospital. So they've requested variances for height. They're requesting 22 meters, whereas 9 meters is permitted. And this would be 148 to 150 Central Avenue. They've also requested height of 22 meters, whereas 12.5 meters is allowed at 167, 167A, 169 Main Street, which would be the front yard of the hospital. They've also requested a rear yard setback of 1.4 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is permitted. I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. DeVries from Hamilton Health Sciences, who I believe is making the presentation this evening.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. You can hear me okay, I take it? Just want to make sure the audio is okay on my end. Can you hear me, Nancy?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. And will you put up the presentation as well? Will you share a screen for that? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll get started. Thanks for the opportunity to provide this short presentation to our minor variance for the new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. Nancy, I'll just let you know when you can proceed to the next slide. And I am joined this evening by a number of my members of our redevelopment team from McCallum-Sather and B+H Architects, who may also provide some input into this during the course of our presentation. They include Joanne McCallum, Willems Ransom, Cecilia Nan, and Kevin Van Hartingsveld from McCallum-Sather, and Chris McQuillan from B+H Architects. We can go to the next slide. Oh, and just as introduction, I am the Director of Redevelopment for Hamilton Health Sciences. And I'm also a local resident. And my main responsibility these days is the new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital project. So what we see here in our first slide is the total site. So 2 introductory comments I would like to make. First of all, this variance is not associated in any way with the Mcnally development, which some of you may be aware of. That's in the works. And second, this variance is really critical to the pathway towards a new hospital. This hospital is on a fast track process. Its dates are aligned to the 2022 provincial election, such that we expect to have on the current path shovels in the ground prior to the call of the next election, June 2022. So every step is critical to get this done on time. So the reason why this variance has been applied for is because it's needed for the function of the hospital. The hospital is very unique. Hospitals can only be delivered within a space that we are proposing. Because there's lots of dependencies, et cetera, and space requirements around the clinical operations of a hospital. There's only one hospital, particularly in Grimsby, and so it really can't be compared to anything else. These are very unique structures. So they're just of note here on, now we have the entire site shown here on this presentation slide. There are a number of property parcels that make up the new West Lincoln Memorial footprint. Those parcels include both the, what I'll refer to as the Deer Park Villa and Mcnally property, as it's known, as well as the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and more on that in a few slides. All the lands in this area are owned by the Hamilton Health Sciences West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to turn the floor over to Cecilia to review the 3 aspects of the minor variance application.
Thanks, Bart. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. So Actually, as Nancy provided in the summary in her opening statement, just on the heels of Bart's clarification that there's a number of parcels on the property, we are requesting a variance for 22 meters, and it's broken up in different areas in response to some exemptions that exist in the zoning for the property. So the entire subject lands are zoned institutional, but the northern portion, municipally known as 148 and 150 Central Avenue, has a height maximum of 9 meters, while the lands fronting on Main Street, known with the full address as indicated in the slide, 167A, 167, 169, have a maximum permitted height of 12.5 meters. And we're requesting a maximum height for a portion of both parcels of 22 meters. We're also requesting the recognition of an existing condition for the Mcnally house, and that's the setback of 4.6 meters. And that will become the rear yard setback because all the components of the subject lands are merging on title. So that will be known now as a rear yard setback. And I'll hand it over to Kevin now for the next few slides.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to speak briefly about the setback. I think the main reason that we're here today is about the height, but we just want to clarify a couple of things. Art already mentioned that this application has nothing to do with the Mcnally house development, but we want to give some context and outline how this will or will not impact anything in terms of future. So what you see on the screen there, there's two drawings labeled on the bottom left. There's a strip at the bottom, which is the drawing that was submitted that should have been distributed. And it indicates the property line and the Mcnally house. But I'm going to draw your attention to the top one for two reasons. One is we want to highlight in a moment what these colors represent and what's actually happening on the site and the reason for this application for variance on the setback. And the second is because there was an error in what was submitted. And you may have noticed the red highlight on the previous slide, 4.6 meters as opposed to 1.4. 1.4 represents the measurement from the existing north face of Mcnally house to an adjacent, I believe it's an easement line, not to the property line. So it should have said 4.6. So we've requested that the resolution today not reflect the 1.4. So to the colors that you see on the screen, why are we doing this? Our application is for two properties, which is a weird thing. Usually you make an application for a single property. That's because HHS owns the two properties. And as you'll see in a subsequent slide, the new building will straddle those two properties. They're both currently owned by HHS. They're both operated by HHS with the region operating Deer Park Villa building. So we need to consolidate those lots so that we can build on top of the property line because you have setbacks from property lines, so we couldn't place it there. So once we do that, this property becomes a through lot. As you saw in the satellite imagery, you can only have frontage on one of two property lines. So Main Street, being the wider street, will become the frontage, which means that the driveway to the northwest, adjacent to Mcnally house, becomes a rear lot line. So what's highlighted in blue is actually the short extent of the frontage because the front lot line is only what's adjacent to the street, and that will become a rear lot line. What's highlighted in red is currently defined as a side lot line because it's not the rear lot line and it's not the front lot line. It will become a rear lot line as well. And then the green lines are side lot lines that remain side lot lines. So understanding that is just to say the impact to this, the request we have for this minor variance is not to allow any future buildings to be done any differently, but to say we would like to allow the Mcnally house to remain where it is. Currently, it is in conformance with the distance required for a front lot line. When it gets redefined as a rear lot line, it will be non-conforming. So all we're doing is saying, can we protect the existing building and allow it to break the law by extending further north than it should and getting closer to the building? So it's a procedural thing only. We can return to that if there's any questions on that, but hopefully that sums it up. And I'll turn it over to Bart again for the next slide.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so I'll continue on then with the height variance request. So a couple things to note here. I'll just start by introduction on this particular slide. First of all, we are not completing the final design now, which seems kind of strange because what you have in front of you is what looks to be pretty much a final design. But in the public-private partnership or P3 process that this project falls under, we are only outlining the requirements and possibilities for the yet to be determined design builder who will actually win the project to complete the final building design for this site. However, the illustrative carries a fair bit of weight in terms of what we expect the future development will look like, particularly in this context where, as we'll uncover in a minute, there's a fair bit of constraints on the site as to where the building can go. So what we've done here is we've taken a block that's easily definable by dimensions and more or less reflects the potential development area on the site for the new hospital. Okay, so that's what you see there in red, which is to say we are not looking for a height variance for the entire site, neither I'll call it the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital site nor the Deer Park Villa or Mcnally site, but simply put, for that area of the property which is developable for the new hospital. You'll notice there that there's a hashed blue line as well, which, as Kevin noted, we are planning to build over an existing property line. So those two parcels that are being merged, that's basically the line where you get the new hospital encroaching on what is currently another property parcel. So as a result of that, that's why this height variance affects both the quote unquote Deer Park Villa parcel as well as the quote unquote West Lincoln Memorial Hospital parcel. Okay, so the reason why this block has been defined, it's constrained to this portion of the site due to the fact that all existing operations, and when I say existing operations, I mean both the existing hospital and the Deer Park Villa, must be maintained until the new hospital is occupied. So once the new hospital is occupied, at that point we demolish the existing West Lincoln Memorial Hospital and complete our remaining site works, which, as you can see towards the bottom of the illustrative here, includes parking lots and extensive new landscaping for the balance of the site. So we can now flip, Nancy, to the next slide. So here you see in context the new proposed hospital footprint, more or less, of the yellow hash mark, and then the existing hospital structures are in red. And then the buildings and structures that are in blue will be demolished straight away when we start the project so that the new hospital can be built there. So it's so why is the building located in this area of the site? Well, again, we have the existing hospital, we have existing Deer Park Villa, both seen there. We have to fit the new hospital in this zone. And it's also because the community wanted the new hospital to remain here. That was very important to them. And one of the drivers behind this project getting done is the fact that the community was behind this and wants to see the new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital here. Second, as I mentioned, we need to maintain the existing operations. So we can't remove a portion of the existing hospital and rebuild it and build it there. We also need to maintain site parking, or at least some of the site parking. So again, more and more it becomes constrained as where we can do that. So at the end of the day, the yellow zone, or the previous slide showed it in that red box, that becomes the only logical location for the new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. We did explore two other options on the site that were deemed non-viable for various reasons. We need to keep in mind that the new hospital is going to be approximately 85% larger, or almost twice as large as the existing. So the only way that we can fit this in and get that square footage on this site is to go vertical to 4 stories. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of an illustrative, high-level illustrative of what the new build would look like as proposed. Again, 22 meters, equivalent to about 4 stories. This will support our clinical requirements. It also benefits us in that by going vertical, we have more land open for hard and soft landscaping. As you can see there, we plan to develop this site to be a major enhancement to the local community with respect to a lot of the grounds work that we're going to be doing on this site plan. Next slide, please. And this here is taken, this illustrative here is taken from the minor variance report. So basically to say that we meet or exceed these requirements, and the requirements being if the proposed building is 22 meters high, then we have to stay 14.5 meters away from the lot line to respect the 45-degree angle. If we go to the next slide, please. What you see here is that currently our illustrative, so actually I should back up, the red zone is what you saw in the previous few slides back, which is our, what we're calling our area of developable area, which we're seeking the 22-meter variance for. And then within that, you can see the proposed illustrative structure, which currently is approximately 20 meters off of the west lot line and about 50 meters off of the east lot line. So setback is important when considering the added height. And again, we are, in our illustrative at least, achieving that and then some, particularly on the east side. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of, this is our final slide just in terms of a summary. So in terms of the setbacks, what will the requirements be? So the east-west frontage, those setbacks, as I just explained, will be 14.5 meters at minimum. They may be more and likely will be more. The north frontage, this is, we're calling this the Mcnally area. So there are no changes being requested that will impact the placement of new buildings with respect to the setbacks along central lot lines or the lot lines abutting the neighboring properties related to the contemplated Mcnally Hills development. And again, just to reiterate, this proposal, this variance has no association whatsoever with any future Mcnally site developments. This is only to address an existing condition because we are merging the properties and thus creating a rear yard setback condition. So why is the building located in this area of the site? So it's the only area really where we can fit a large structure such as this and allow existing hospital operations to continue. Will the height variance apply to the entire site? No, it's only going to be within that highlighted area in red. And the final building footprint will ultimately reside within a portion of this space, not its entirety. If we were to build 22 meters in that entire space, we would end up with a building that's probably about 5 times bigger than we would ever need it to be. So it's only a portion of that. But again, with the P3 process, there's innovations that the design builder brings to the table. So we cannot say it has to be exactly like this, but we just give them a footprint to do that in. And finally, why does Westlake Memorial need the 4-story? There's been a number of points made on that already. We did explore a 3-story scheme. It did not support the clinical objectives, which were really the driver for the hospital. The narrower footprint has advantages as well, clinically and operationally. It's also more efficient from an operational cost, construction cost perspective. And there's also, regarding a basement, that's really not achievable. We have a high water table and floodplain impacts from the adjacent water course, which runs on the east side of the property. Another thing to keep in mind is that hospital floor to ceiling heights are quite extensive. They range anywhere from 4.5 to 7 meters, which is much more than, let's say, a residential floor to ceiling height. Because of the equipment that is in the room, in the ceilings of these rooms, the clearances are much more. So the tighter footprint also has a significant net benefit to the site plan, the ability to complete some of the landscaping that we are proposing. And finally, spreading out the hospital program on a smaller footprint, if that was possible, would mean that it would increase the coverage of the building on the site and brings the building closer to adjacent property lines and reduces the amount of hard and soft landscaping that can be achieved in the final site plan. That's all, and we're happy to address any questions there may be.
Thank you very much. We will have the secretary read any of the letters and correspondence that we've received, and then everyone will have a chance to comment or make their concerns known. But again, please, as indicated at the beginning, if you are duplicating what someone has already said, please just indicate that I agree with what so-and-so has said, or I'm opposed to it, or whatever. So if we're trying to get this meeting as efficient as possible. So if the secretary could read the correspondence.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we've received correspondence. Public Works Department was circulated. They have no comment. Region of Niagara also had no comment. They said any concerns can be dealt with at the site plan stage. We had a letter from Miss Sue Tiley on behalf of the Condo Board of Directors for 165 Main Street East. Ms. Tiley raised the concerns about the height in relation to the one-story townhomes at 165 Main Street East, and also the impact of the height in terms of shadowing. She also commented on potential drainage problems from the hospital property to their homes. And she also inquired about the existing fencing on the west side of the hospital. She noted that that belongs to the condo association, and she asked if that will remain. She also inquired about whether or not there will be parking on the west side of the hospital. Next, we have a letter from Mr. Ron Gdansky at 10 Sunny Lee Crescent. Mr. Gdansky, expressed concerns about allowing a commercial parking lot adjacent to a residential subdivision. The last portion of correspondence that I have is from Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. They noted that there is, the subject lands are impacted by a water course and associated 15-meter buffer that traverses the lots, and as well as a variable floodplain. They noted that they are in support in principle of the hospital, but they also note that the applicants will need to obtain a work permit from the NPCA prior to any commencement of work on the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary. Is there anyone on the committee that has any questions regarding this application? Danielle?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm assuming that this question probably would be better directed either towards staff or to Nancy. The applicant is proposing that the minor variance only apply to one portion of the site. From my understanding, variances are carried with the property in perpetuity. How are we going to restrict this variance to only be applicable to that location on the property? And then my next question is I did see in the staff comments that a site plan application has already been submitted. Is consolidation of these properties going to be a condition or a requirement of the site plan application?
Would the Director of Planning like to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the two questions, the site plan and the merger of the properties, yes, that will be a requirement of the site plan, but I anticipate that that will occur prior to final approval of the site plan, so it may not need to be a condition. What was the other question again? I apologize.
No problem. Sorry, through the chair. It was the applicant's request to have the minor variance for the height to apply to only one portion of the site, and how are we going to ensure that that's enforced?
Yeah, our recommendation through you, Mr. Chair, is that the approval resolution identify certain setbacks, which we've recommended, to which the increase in height will apply. So essentially to identify the building envelope by way of the resolution.
Yes, I believe we could put it as a condition that these requirements are only for the construction of the hospital and not other buildings on the property.
Sorry, thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to confirm then that the resolution that was previously circulated does not include those setbacks. So when it comes time to it, Nancy, I would like to make sure that that is included in our resolution so we know that it is only tied to that one block.
So what you're recommending is that a part of the resolution be that it be restricted to just the hospital building itself?
Yes, through the chair, as per Mr. Basic's recommendations, I think he said that he had identified some setbacks to the height increase block. I don't see it in the staff comments and it's not reflected in our resolution. But again, I think that's something that we can deal with at that time.
Okay. Walter, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, exactly. My recommendation is to specifically identify build within zone by way of a condition of the resolution of this committee. So in other words, a condition of approval that will identify the area within the site within which the 22-meter height would be permitted. So there will be a setback identified from the rear lot line, a setback from the front lot line, and setbacks from the side lot lines to which the 22-meter height restriction would be applied.
Madam Secretary?
Yes, thank you, Chair, through you. So our deputy clerk is here this evening, and thankfully she reminded me that we should not be making any recommendations until
the delegate have been heard and all the information.
So if we can limit our comments on recommendations until everything is heard, and then we can read the motion.
Okay, Dylan?
And just a clarification through you, Mr. Chair. In the presentation, they talked about, or sorry, it was mentioned that the to allow for a rear yard setback of, I believe it was 4.6 meters, but the resolution, it states 4.1 meters, and I know originally it was 1.4 meters. So could I just get some clarification on what is being recommended, if it's the 4.1, the 4.6, or the 1.4?
Yes. Mr. DeVries, would you please elaborate on that?
Yes, so it is for the 4.6 meters. Kevin, you can confirm that, or Cecilia?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Is that answer your question, Dylan?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, but just to clarify, that is what the applicant is asking, is the 4.1 what staff is recommending? I apologize if I'm confusing the item.
Walter, could you please address that?
Thank you. The memo that was prepared by staff was based on the information that the northerly setback to the Mcnally house was 1.4 meters and that it was existing. So our recommendation was that the existing setback is acceptable. Now we understand that the actual setback is 4.6 meters. So I would recommend that any resolution or condition include a provision of recognizing the existing setback of 4.6 meters and not 1.4 meters.
Is there any other comments from the committee members? None? Is there, we'll go through the people that have made requirements to talk tonight. Wayne Mullins, is he with us tonight?
I am, Mr. Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you can.
Mr. Chair, I'm a resident on Linwood Avenue, which adjoins the hospital lands. I'm reasonably well acquainted with the hospital proposal, as I'm a citizen member of the design team to assist with the development. And I certainly have to compliment the design team on the professionalism that they've exhibited through this planning process. My reason only for being here this evening is to bring forward some requests for clarification from adjoining neighbors of mine, some of whom are fairly elderly and do not have the ability to attend a Zoom session. So if I could just, to 2 points of clarification, if I could, Mr. Chair. I understand that the hospital submission is for the variance for the footprint of the hospital as is shown on the plans. However, if the lands get combined, right now, one part of the existing lands have a 9-meter height and another part has a 12-meter height. So when the land is consolidated, what will be the height permission for the balance of the land outside of the existing hospital footprint that we are talking about?
My understanding is, and Mr. DeVries might be able to elaborate, and Walter on this as well, is that the existing buildings will stay the same until they are redeveloped. Is this correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the zoning permissions for height, maximum height, for the northerly portion of the lot will remain, or the height permissions for the portions of the lot that exist currently will remain, irrespective of whether or not it is 2 properties or 1 property. So the exception is for 12 meters for the southerly portion of the lot and 9 meters for the northerly portion of the lot. So that will remain. The only difference as a result of all of the amalgamation and the proposed variance would be that there would be a 22-meter height permission for the defined area identified in a dotted red line on the previous slideshow.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So then, Mr. Chair, another question of clarification on the setbacks, what is now I understand to be the 4.6 meter setback. Is that 4.6 meter setback only relating to the footprint of the Mcnally building to the lot line, or does that extend the full length of the northern perimeter lot line on the neighborhood boundary behind the existing residences on Central Avenue all the way to the Linwood Avenue property lines?
I think in the slide that was presented, there was the blue lines along the back, along the north property line, and the green and the red lines. I believe the setback would be all along that blue line or the green line across the north property line. Is that correct, Mr.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the reduction in the required setback will only be for the existing building. Actually, because of the shifting of what is defined as a rear lot line on the northerly lot, which is the Mcnally House property, because of the amalgamation, the northerly lot line will become rear lot line and carry with it a required setback of 7.5 meters for a rear lot line instead of the existing 4.5 meters for a side lot line. So the northerly setback for any new construction will actually be increased from 4.5 meters to 7.5 meters as a result of the amalgamation. And the variance will only reduce the setback requirement for the existing building, not any new construction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That clarifies my questions. Thank you.
Okay. The next person on the list is Sante and Heather Tonelato. Are they here? You need to turn your volume on.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? This meeting in one that the Town of Grimsby official plan, section 3.10, institutional areas. The intent of this plan is to recognize new and existing institutional uses within the Town of Grimsby, to ensure that the institutional uses are located
You're breaking up. I can hardly hear you.
Compatibility with adjacent, I'm just quoting the objectives of the institutional areas in the Town of Grimsby. And accessibility to residents, a compatibility with adjacent uses, permitted uses, sections 310.1 within the institutional. Do you want me to read all this? I know that these are available to the staff.
If you could just indicate what your concerns are, that would be great.
Well, my concerns are the conformity of the requested variances. Specifically, the two side corridors along the hospital, which are both 14.5 meters in the build area. Okay, that 14.5 is afforded the luxury of 7 houses on the east boundary. Can we not ensure that, and then another 4, I believe 4 houses in the area where the drainage section of the creek provides a barrier. It provides
You're breaking up. We can barely hear you.
Can we not extend that, please? I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can here.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can. So the back property line, any other time, if this was a residential area, you would maintain a 7.5 buffer zone. There is nothing to say that we can't consistently on the property east of the creek flowing north alongside that forms the east boundary of Mcnally House. There is nothing to say that we can't allow the 1.5 meters as site specific for Mcnally House in that footprint and maintain the 7.5 meter setback on the north property. If you would stand in that property at approximately, because we can't find the north boundary line, there is a definite site projection from 1.5 or a site perspective at 1.5 and at 7.5. So what we're saying is, if this variance application is acceptable to change, we see no problems in moving forward. If they can insist on making these changes, then we have a problem with the residents. Because I'll tell you, you say that this has no pertinence to Mcnally House. It specifically, as we know it out here on the street, very much has a lot to do with Mcnally House. We know the circumstances in the area. Nobody's hiding that. By saying that these setbacks don't affect residents, they certainly do. Am I clear enough? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. You were broken up a little bit during your presentation, but I believe.
Sorry.
Yeah, I believe the setback along the north property line, which is Mcnally House, which backs onto Central Avenue. Is that the property? Is that the property line?
Yeah, that's the property line I'm talking about.
Okay, I believe Mr. Basic,
Yes.
Walter Basic, has outlined what that setback would be. You would like him to clarify that again? Hello?
Walter Basic. Now, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. I know Walter has addressed it. Walter has a different perspective and a different intent than what I read into the book.
Okay, so basically my understanding is that the setback is going to stay at 4.5, if you wanted to clarify that, Walter.
Yeah, the proposed reduced setback is only for the existing building. And I believe, I believe our recommendation, or my recommendation is to include a provision in the decision to make sure that it only applies to the existing building and not any new construction. And as a result of the amalgamation of the two properties, the setback from the rear lot lines of the Central Avenue properties would be increased from the existing 4.5 meters, which is a side yard setback. But because it would become a rear lot line, the setback would now, the minimum setback would now become 7.5 meters from the rear lot lines of the Central Avenue property. So that would be those would be the two differences. Permit the existing building to stay where it is, and it would result in an increased setback of from 4.5 meters to 7.5 meters for the properties abutting Central Avenue.
Okay, did you understand what was, did that answer your question?
May I make a comment? May I make a comment? Is there or is there not a site-specific front line variance for Mcnally House at the present time? Yes or no? Walter?
Walter, if you would.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The existing Mcnally house actually was built in accordance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, which with the minimum setback requirement of 4.5 meters. So the existing setback of 4.6 meters conforms to the existing side yard setback requirement of 4.5 meters, which is what the northerly lot line is abutting the Mcnally house, the building itself right now.
No, it doesn't.
Thank you, Walter. Now, so you understand that because of these properties being merged, that northerly property line is being changed from a side yard setback to a rear yard setback.
Okay. We have seen always within the city, we have seen property lines carved up. My recommendation is the westerly property, the westerly northeast property line, which is now going to become a rear property line, be kept at 7.5 meters from the creek to the easterly property line of HHS. Because the creek cannot be accessed and built on and diverted or by whatever means without extensive expenses, Mcnally stands and would at that point stand as a sole entity with site-specific boundaries to it. Being that I don't have a problem of giving Mcnally House the 1.5 to make them in accordance, but only as site-specific, not the real total rear line property. Rear line property has to remain the same as 7.5 in order to move forward. Because this is my objection. If you were to view the back properties along Central Avenue, there is a totally different perspective at 1.5 meters and at 7.5 meters. At 7.5 meters with a fence on the property line, you won't be able to see into the backyards of the people. Regardless of what you want to do.
That's what is the back property line is going to be 7.5 meters, except where Mcnally House is, it's going to be 4.5 meters.
Could you put the plan up again?
I don't believe so. I believe they're asking for 1.5 site-specific.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to put the plan up just to clarify, just so that, to make sure. So if you could put it to the and mute, please. There. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. There.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you. So the red line currently is a side lot line. If you could just mute whoever's got their.
No.
Can you mute?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Now I don't hear myself 3 times. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the red line currently is a side lot line. That, because it's a side lot line, the minimum setback requirement from that lot line currently is 4.5 meters. As a result of the merger of the 2 lots, that red line will become a rear lot line because the front lot line will be Main Street because the lots are merged. The opposite lot line, which is the red line, will become the rear lot line, therefore establishing a new setback of 7.5 meters, whereas currently the setback requirement is 4.5 meters. So I hope that clarifies that.
Am I still on?
Yes.
Okay. No, it does not clarify it. Because on your bottom drawing, you show a 1.5 setback. And that setback,
Can you put
if
it
it's
back,
granted, extends all the way to the east boundary line of Mcnally property. And if it's what you,
Thank you. There it is. Can you see it now?
yes,
Okay, the plan on the south side or on the bottom of the page,
yes.
that illustrates the setback that they applied for, but was applied for by mistake. The actual setback is 4.6 meters, as is shown on the top plan, and not the 1.6 meters or 1.4 meters as is shown on the bottom plan. So
Okay, so
our recommendation is to change the condition of approval so that the setback for the existing building only is reduced to 4.6 meters. So the reduction wouldn't be for the entire lot. The reduction would be only for the existing building. That's our recommendation. And I hope that that's how the committee will vote tonight. Thank you.
so you're,
Okay, so I think that's been explained. Now, I think we need to move on
I just
from
want to get
that.
it straight in my own mind. I want to get
Okay.
it straight in my own mind.
Okay, so if there's this the present side yard now, okay, which is that red line,
Yes.
is being changed to a rear yard.
Right.
Okay, so it's still, it will have a 7.5 meter setback, being a rear yard property line. Do you understand
Okay.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So the only portion that is going to be 4.6 meters is the actual portion that is adjacent to Mcnally House.
Only the existing building.
Only the existing building.
Well,
That's it.
So
If
the rest of the property, all along Central Avenue, that backyard is going to be 7.5 meters.
well, you answered my question on that.
Okay,
But on the McNally house, if you only give them on the site a
this is
4.5
what they have
meter
right
setback.
now. This is what they have right now. This is what-
4.5,
4.6.
4.6. Okay, excuse me.
Yes, so that's what they have right now, to that property line,
On the numbers, I apologize on the numbers. So you're asking for the variance on the front property line of 1.5, McNally site specific. Yes or no? That
McNally,
puts it in plain words.
No.
That puts it in plain words.
okay.
That puts it in plain words.
No,
Let me answer
McNally
that.
House has 4.6 meters where it is built right now. The
Wait,
future backyard,
know
future
what you're asking.
future rear yard setback is going to be 7.5 meters. That's what's applied for. So that's what we're looking at. We need to move on. So
You're not answering my question. Wait a minute. I agree we need to move on, but you're not answering my question, answering a question. The question is directly asked to you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. The question is directly asked to you, and either you don't have the facts or you don't understand what I'm asking. But to me, a site variance of 1.5 meters on the northerly property line, that's in your variance. That is very specific. 148, 150. Okay, on the merger, it all becomes the hospital property. At that time, it changes. I understand what you're saying. It changes to a rear lot because of the addresses on Main Street. The 7.5 is not extended.
Where are you getting this 1.4 meters? You're
You're
muted. You're
again,
not.
Chair.
You're muted. You can't. Your mic's not on.
Okay. That's on now. Okay.
Okay.
We're not talking the north property line on Central Avenue. On your diagram, you show 1.5 meter variance. You're asking for a 1.5 meter variance on the northerly rear setback.
Madam Secretary, could you read the exact wording for the northerly setback?
Let's put it on the drawing. Put the drawing up. I got your drawing right here. It shows the main property line, the northerly property line, which is now the rear property line. And then it shows 3 variations on this one here, this line here. Now, the bottom.
Okay, we need to, we let the.
On the bottom property.
We let the Secretary Treasurer read that section,
Through the
please.
chair. So can I please refer this question to Walter Basic? Because I believe he can provide clarification.
Okay, Walter, would you like to address that again?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As you can see on this plan, the bottom picture shows the application as it was proposed initially and as it was circulated, which would be the 1.4 meter setback. So can you see, do you understand that one? Bottom picture. That's what they applied for, which is exactly what you're saying. You're absolutely right. You're right. The application was for that.
4.5 meters.
No, the application was for 1.5 or 1.
Okay.
Right? That's the bottom plan. So they realized that they made a mistake.
Yep.
They realized that the building isn't 1.4 meters from the northerly lot line. They realized that actually 4.6 meters from the lot line. So what they're asking for now is for the committee to change that application so that the approval would be not for 1.4 meters. The applicants are asking for it to be changed to allow the existing building setback of 4.6 meters. So they're now asking for 4.6 meters instead of 1.4 meters, right? And what they're also requesting is that that setback only apply to the existing building, not any new buildings, only the existing building. You understand that?
Yes.
That's what they're asking for. Okay. So do you have any other questions other than that?
Okay. If they, would that not put them?
Okay, so I think
I just want clarification on this, and then I'll let the floor go. Okay, but by asking for a 1.4 meter setback on this here on McNally, doesn't that put them in violation of their previous building variance?
They asked for that setback by mistake because they didn't realize that the actual setback is 4.6 meters, not 1.4 meters.
Okay. Okay, we need to move on from this. I think the answer has been given to you several times. So is there anyone else? The next person on the list is Debbie Copergen.
Yep, that's me.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I just want a clarification that the setback on the easterly side of the property would be 4.5 meters.
On the easterly property, I believe it's 14.5 meters.
14.5 meters?
On the easterly property line?
Yeah, bordering
Or
Linwood
the
Avenue.
westerly?
Easterly. It would be bordering Linwood Avenue.
Okay, just one moment. Walter's going to address that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The existing side yard setback requirement in the zone is 4.5 meters. And the requirement is to increase in height based on, or increase setback based on the height of the building. So, so the higher the building, the farther the setback requirement would be. Now, what's being proposed is a variance for a setback. If the building is set back 14.5 meters, they're asking for the building envelope. The building envelope would be 22 meters height based on a setback of 14.5 meters. So a building of that height would not be permitted closer than 14.5 meters to the easterly lot line or the westerly lot line based on the proposed variance.
Okay. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay, then. The next on the list is Jerry Varccio.
Almost.
Varccio.
Varccio.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Walter and the folks for catching the mistake and clarifying the fact that the rear setback will be maintained at the 7.5. That's welcome news. My question, and I'm asking for clarification here, is regarding the height variance that you are requesting. While you've said it's exclusive to the new hospital footprint, by granting this variance, it's basically a blanket variance across the entire property with the exception of the existing buildings at Deer Park and Mcnally. What my question is any new construction, any new buildings put up on that merged property will now have access to that 22-meter height. Is that correct?
The application is just for the new hospital, and that's going to be the requirement or the stipulation in the application if it is passed, that it only pertains to the new hospital, that height restriction.
That, and through the chair, that still doesn't quite clarify it for me, because the entire property will have access, other than the existing buildings, will have access to that 22-meter height, unless there's some kind of restriction that stops it for any new construction. The concern is if there is any new building put up on the rest of the property, that 22-meter height or variance will be granted to them as well. It'll certainly be easily accessible.
No, that's
my concern.
That's what I had just indicated, that the 22 meters is only for the hospital building.
So any new building has no access to that. They're still restricted to the 9 meters.
It's only for the new hospital.
You keep saying that. I'd like to hear you say that any new building is restricted to 9 meters. Other than the hospital.
I'll let Walters address that for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, if you received a notice in the mail,
I did.
The plan itself showed a red dotted line, the box. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. So the proposed variance for 22-meter height restriction or extension is only for that red box area, right? So the variance, if it goes according to my recommendation, would only apply to that red area, to that dotted area, and or the red shaded area. And
Now-
what I recommended was having the resolution or a condition of approval include a setback requirements for a 22-story structure. I believe the setbacks are approximately 140 meters from the northerly lot line, 79 meters from the southerly lot line, 14.5 meters from the easterly and westerly lot line. So I recommend that the condition of approval include a provision whereby those setbacks are instilled in the decision.
Through the chair, I understand that. Under table 1 of the application summary, one of the variances that has been requested for 148 to 150 Central Avenue is a maximum height of 22 meters from the current permitted zoning height of 9 meters.
9 meters.
That is part of the application according to the paperwork in front of me. And that's what I'm specifically asking for. While you have requested exclusively that red box, the application summary indicates that the request for the maximum height of 22 meters extends to 148 to 150 Central Avenue. Now, I know it's been stated that the hospice and Deer Park are going to, their existing heights are going to be maintained, or the existing buildings maintained it as is. But if this application summary is correct, what this says to me is that any new buildings, any new footprints created on this merged property now closer to Central Avenue are going to have that 22 meter height restriction instead of the 9 meter height restriction. So, unless I'm missing something here, unless this is maybe another error or mistake.
No, it's not an error or mistake. The purpose for the description, the way it was circulated, it's probably a little misleading. However, the actual the reason for the description the way it is because the hospital footprint, or that red box, partially encroaches into that Central Avenue property. So the red box actually is partially on the Central Avenue property as well as the hospital property. So that's why the notice was worded that way, to illustrate that the existing lot on Central Avenue has a restriction of 9 meters, and the existing lot on Main Street has a restriction of 12.5 meters. So, it's because there's two different regulations for the two different lots, right? But what the request was to permit a 22-story high building within the red box. So the challenge now is to ensure that the decision actually restricts the increase in height only to the red box. So what I'm recommending is that the decision explicitly say that the 22 height permission applies only to the red box.
And so the 9 meter
The resolution
restriction still applies to the rest of the property.
That's correct. And the 12.5 meter restriction would apply to the old hospital lot.
Then that satisfies that satisfies my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person on the agenda is Sabrina Churchill.
Hi, I have nothing further to add. Actually, Mr. Verchecchio actually did all my questions, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
John and Alistair Morrison. Hello,
Hi.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
barely.
Oh, here, let me pull it in close. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but you're
Can you hear
breaking
me?
up.
Oh.
Can you proceed?
Yes. Okay. So what I have a question.
On the west side, hang on, the east side of the building, the hospital building, there's 14.5 meters. As Sante had said earlier, and myself too, my concern is softening the outside look of the hospital to blend into the neighborhood, as you have mentioned. I want to be sure though that this, as Sante had also said, so just making sure, it goes down the entire side, north, south, and across the back of the central properties, their backyards. There will be tons of foliage there, plus possibly a fence 7.5 meters out from their backyard off Central, and also along the north-south Linwood, the back of Linwood. So it'd be a big L shape, and possibly across to the piece of property if you were facing Mcnally House to the right of it. So there'd be some foliage there, so people on Central aren't looking at a hospital wall, they'll be looking at foliage. So that it blends in, it makes it, softens it for the entire neighborhood and keeps the look of the neighborhood. Did you guys all hear that? Did I yell at you there?
No, we heard that.
Okay,
And
I said it loud.
just to explain that the committee is looking at the variances.
Yes.
The landscaping and so forth would be looked at under site plan.
Yes.
So that's where you would need to make your concerns noted for that.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing I would like to ask is,
Could you speak into the mic?
I thought I was. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So another thought I had as you were speaking earlier, and I had concerns of, is you said that there was no really other place to compare to for this Grimsby Hospital site. And I know this is sort of a gone thing, but it may be a referential thing. If you looked at Oakville Hospital old site, it was built right smack in the middle of a residential zone, and how they handled things there. So this has been done before, and they did encompass it. So you hardly knew the hospital was there. There was foliage all around it with a very special parking ramp that was not high. Now that's done sort of just saying that existed, and that if you have compared the build here to apartment and commercial, not somebody else's hospital site where this has been done well. And I didn't know if that would be a consideration to look at going forward, a thought about the site plan here. And that's
like I said, we're looking at the variance applications, the site plan. You would have to bring up those considerations at that time.
okay. Also, one more thing. If you say intent going forward,
You need to look at speak into the mic.
I thought I was. Am I now speaking into the? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. When you say the word intent, and this is just because sometimes things don't work out the way people hear them. Going forward, your intent, you do the hospital, it gets built. If Deer Park or Mcnally want to do something and your intent seems to fall, their changes seem to be in the intent of the town, but not the people, are you going to stick to what we have said before, and it's been answered, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
You need to speak into the mic.
The height of the buildings will remain the same. The intent will not change for Mcnally House or Deer Park. The word intent throws me off when I see it written, and I'm concerned that you could change things because of the word intent going forward. And can you do that to us going forward, not as it stands now for this hospital site? The definition of the word intent kind of leaves things obscure. Do you follow?
Yes, I'll ask Walter to address that, and maybe Mr. DeVries as well after Walter is finished.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your question. I think I'm not sure I didn't quite catch where the word intent was coming from, but for the remainder of the site, outside of that red box, the existing zoning regulations would still apply, other than the setbacks from the lots on Central Avenue those setbacks would be increased to 7.5 meters from 4.5 meters. So that would only change outside of the red box. Otherwise, only the red box area would be subject to the new height provision. So in other words, on the northerly lot, on the existing Mcnally house site, the existing zoning regulations would apply other than the increased setback from the Central Avenue lots, which is a maximum height of 9 meters.
And that would
Right, and a setback of 7.5 meters from the northerly lot line, which is the Central Avenue lots, and 4.5 meters from the easterly lot line, which is the side lot line. And right, and if an application comes forward for the Mcnally house, that application would require a zoning amendment, because what I understand is they intend to provide access off of Linwood. So they would need to change and that would involve another planning application, which you would have an opportunity to comment on. So any proposal for the Mcnally house, again, is separate from what we're discussing tonight, and will be subject to a separate application, a separate public meeting, separate open house, where you'll have an opportunity to review any proposal that they submit and see how it impacts anything that would be impactful on any of the abutting properties.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
I believe so.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next person on our list is Paul DiPietro.
Hi there, can you guys hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Just barely.
How about now? I'll move a little bit closer.
Okay.
Can you hear me a little bit better? Yeah. Okay, perfect. My name's Paul DiPietro. I live at 152 Central Avenue, which is right next door to the current hospice building. Okay. I have some questions and some concerns and some comments to make. First of all, regarding the height variances, how can you assure in the future that this isn't going to set a precedent that the next, like Mcnally or Deer Park wants to apply, now a precedent is set, just like it's been done other places in the community? How can you assure that that's not going to happen?
All applications are reviewed on their own merits, and there is no precedent-setting decisions made on any variances or that come to the committee.
But it's a lot harder.
Every application is looked at separately.
Fair enough, but it's a lot harder to say no after you've already said yes to somebody else, right?
No, it's been done. It's been done before.
It's been done both ways.
Yes.
In this town. Thank you very much. Okay, next comment. I think what Joanne's trying to say, as far as having a buffer zone that goes all the way around the property line.
Like I had indicated to her, that is discussed at the zoning, or not at zoning, at site plan. We don't look at that here.
But as a neighbor that's going to look at a 4 to 5 story building, those two things go hand in hand. If I don't have the assurances that there's going to be a buffer and my privacy is going to be restored, then I don't agree to the variance. I'm opposed to it. Correct? So you need to work with the community. You can't just say, oh, it's a yes or no answer. Well, no, these things work together. They go hand in hand.
Like I said, yes, the site plan will be a public meeting and you will have input into that as well. So you need to take care of that. I'll let Walter speak to that again on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, maybe the applicant, somebody on the applicant's behalf might be able to speak to the landscaping proposals or the willingness to do some landscaping on the site.
Well, the photo also does not show the landscaping across the north boundary. Which concerns me as well.
Okay, Mr. DeVries, would you like to address that?
Yeah, and maybe I might ask our architect, Chris McConnell, maybe to speak to that. I mean, one thing I would say is that we do want to be a good neighbor. with this development. So a lot of what we're doing is focused in making sure that this is an enhancement to the site and to our neighbors. And Chris might also talk about the north face of this. Again, keeping in mind that we are only talking, all we're developing is the hospital itself, which actually backs onto the back of Deer Park Villa. But in terms of buffering and landscaping, whatever, perhaps Chris wants to say a couple words about that. Thank you.
Hi, how are you, Paul and Chair? I guess comments are directed to the Chair. At this point, we had been concentrating in the design of the new hospital, as Bart has said, predominantly on the land that the hospital is currently occupying and the immediate adjacency. So we haven't taken into consideration the perspective of the lots that are at the extreme north edge of the property. So I think understanding the input that we've received today, those lots on the very northern edge of the property will face the northern face of the hospital. Admittedly, you're going to be looking over the current Deer Park building, and you'll see the top portion of the hospital as proposed. We can look at the kind of site impacts and the view impacts of what that would be like. And in the process of the site plan approval process, where we have more specifics about the landscaping and the landscape buffers and the requirements that we're going to put into the project, we can have that as part of the discussion. And I think, like Bart has said, and acting, speaking on behalf of HHSC, we want to be a good neighbor. This is a community building, maybe the most important community building, and we want the community to be proud of it. And we want to make it as good a hospital as we can on, honestly, a relatively tight piece of property, for a hospital. I mean, just reflecting a comment that was made earlier about New Oakville Hospital, they outgrew their hospital site and ended up moving the hospital way out of town. So, I think that designing in a sensitive way is something that we've been trying to do. And in the next step of the application, which will be, I believe, soon, we will look at those and come back and have a conversation about them.
Okay. Like I said, I didn't see anything in your drawings. We feel neglected in the north end. That's all. We want to be part of your process as well. Now I'll move to my comments about the variance for Mcnally House. Okay. I strongly disagree with the variance for Mcnally House. I disagree that it's compatible with the character and image of the surrounding area. The existing hospice is much wider and bigger than the majority of the houses on the street by over 20 to 30 feet. The elevation of the current hospice is 5 feet higher than my property, with a 5-foot retaining wall that spans the front of Central Avenue in the property. The Grimsby bylaw requires a minimum rear setback of 7.5 meters for institutional. It states that the intent of this is for the privacy of neighboring properties, as well as to ensure there's sufficient maintenance space. Okay. I live right next door to the current hospice. I have no privacy from them. Okay. The photos that were taken, there was no photos taken of my privacy for some reason. The photos, so the current hospice sits adjacent to my backyard. Okay. The hospice has a walkway around the entire building with 14 doors accessing the hospice. There are 4 resident doors along the east side facing my backyard and 2 facing the north, my other yard. There's constant traffic to each of the resident doors, which has increased since the COVID. Due to the elevation of the Mcnally being constructed 5 feet higher than my property and being adjacent to my rear yard, I have no privacy from staff and visitors to the hospice. They have a clear view into my backyard with a view of my back door. There's no buffer zone or vegetation of any sorts, trees, to create privacy around the east and north sides of the hospice, as recommended in Grimsby's official plan. I am constantly exposed to ambulances, funeral home vehicles, stretchers, body bags, and grieving families. It's disgusting. Okay, so I strongly oppose that. As far as the front door to the main hospice, okay, it does not match the streetscape. The front door is 30 feet from a residential sidewalk. It's visible from the road. It's visible from all the houses across from Central Avenue. The neighborhood is constantly exposed again to ambulance, funeral home vehicles, body bags, stretchers, grieving families. The institutional setbacks were designed to protect residential neighborhoods from the activities of institutions. There's no buffer zone or significant landscaping to shield the residents on Central Avenue or passing residents from the daily activities of the hospice, as recommended again in the Grimsby official plan. Regarding the front yard and the setbacks, when you view the hospice from the northeast corner, there's no sufficient streetscape. There's a clear view of the front door. And again, it's visible to passing cars. I don't support the rezoning of the rear lot line. I do not. Something needs to change. Something needs to block that from families, from children, from passing cars. I believe with the ever increasing effects of COVID-19 and mental health, the community, young children and families should not be exposed to that.
I think this has been addressed already by the previous comments. This hospice there's no changes to it. The building is there. These setbacks already exist.
The building should never have been put so close to Central Avenue in the first place. Do you not hear me?
The building was put there before the houses were put in.
No, see,
so
where's your information come from, sir? My house was built before the hospice. Hospice came after.
Before most of the houses that were built there.
You're incorrect again, sir. You're incorrect. Okay. All those houses.
Okay. The committee is looking at the variances. We're not looking at the landscaping for this, and this has already been addressed with the other questions that have been asked. So if we can move on, that would be great. Is there anyone else that would have any comments for these variants here tonight? No further questions? Could I have the motion for the variance before us tonight? Do I have a mover?
You have to read it.
Okay, we'll have the secretary treasurer read it first, and then we'll have a motion. Okay, Walter's going to address your concerns, Mr. DiPietro, before we read the motion.
Yeah, thank you. With respect to the existing hospice and the landscaping around it, I think it's important to note that we will likely get an application for a site plan and for a zoning amendment for the hospice expansion. At that time, I think it'll give us an opportunity to revisit how the existing landscaping has worked around the existing hospice, and maybe learn from past experience and maybe make improvements. So if there are existing situations where there is overlook into the privacy area of your backyard, then maybe this will be an opportunity to make corrections in that regard. Okay.
Thank you, Walter. Do I have a motion on this before us tonight?
Through the chair, I'll read the motion. Resolved that submission A19-20 by Hamilton Health Sciences to permit a maximum height of 22 meters whereas 9 meters is permitted to the rear of the subject lands, and a maximum height of 22 meters, whereas 12.5 meters is permitted in the front yard of the subject lands, and to allow a rear yard setback of 1.4 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is permitted, be approved subject to the following conditions: that a 4.6 meter rear yard setback apply only to the existing hospice building. Number 2, that the maximum 22 meter height apply only to a hospital building within a building envelope that is 140 meters south of the rear lot line, 14.5 meters from the side lot lines, and 79 meters north of the front lot line. Number 3, that the applicant obtain site plan approval from the town to address matters such as shadow impacts of the final building design. Number 4, that the applicant obtain a work permit from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority prior to any site alterations or development of subject lands relating to the 15-meter setback from the water course or with the small channel under the new hospital. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this?
I don't freaking believe this.
I see
Okay,
Dylan.
for the motion, who would like
Sorry,
to move it?
through the chair, Nancy, can we get the first variance read out again? I believe you're still stating that the
Okay,
variance requested
so-
is for 1.4
Okay.
meters.
Just for clarification, it does say 1.4 meters, but there is a condition that says that it be 4.6 meters. So it's included that they applied for the 1.4 meters, but it's being changed in the condition to 4.6 meters for the rear yard for the existing hospice building. Does that provide clarification, Danielle?
Through the chair, yes. Can we not just amend the variance to reflect the 4.6 and that the condition reflect that it's only applicable to the existing building? I think that would be
Certainly.
cleaner because then as it's adopted, it's specific to the 4.6. And I just want to make sure that the applicants are okay with that because I think that I just want to, and then I believe the residents also appear to have some concerns. So I think we're just getting clarification that the variance will be for 4.6 meters instead of the 1.4. And that the condition would be that it would be only applicable to the existing Mcnally house. And then so for clarification, any future development would be required to comply with the 7.5 meter rear yard setback unless they undertake another planning application process, which would be a public process that the neighbors can be a part of. Has that explained it for everybody?
Okay, can you repeat that again, Danielle?
Sorry.
The last portion?
So the minor variance, yes, 4.6 meters. And
Yes.
that the condition, it would be for the existing Mcnally house.
Okay, just for the point of clarification, their application was for 1.4 meters. So that's why that condition was included there.
Correct.
Okay,
And I'm just for
yes.
clarification, I'm just requesting that we amend the variance so that when we have our notice of decision, the variance specifically says it's 4.6 meters, that it's not, that we're not approving 1.4, but then the condition says that it only applies to the Mcnally house. Does that make?
Okay. No.
Yes, you would need to amend it to,
Sorry, Nancy, I think you're muted.
Am I allowed to speak here? Hello?
Sorry, yeah, sorry to everyone in the room. We're still here. We have just Walter and Nancy conferring on the language, making sure that we reflect the changes being asked for by the committee members. So just bear with us as we take a few minutes to update the language, and then we'll come back to you with the revised wording. So bear with us. We are here. We just are on mute as we make the changes. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Secretary, do you have that available?
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion, folks. So we're going to read this again. So I'll start from the very beginning, just so it's clear to everyone.
Can you speak?
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me okay? So resolved that submission A19-20 by Hamilton Health Sciences to permit a maximum height of 22 meters, whereas 9 meters is permitted to the rear of the subject lands, and a maximum height of 22 meters, whereas 12.5 meters is permitted in the front yard of the subject lands, and to allow a rear yard setback of 4.6 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is permitted, be approved, subject to the reduced rear yard setback apply only to the existing hospice building at a revised setback of 4.6 meters, that the maximum 22 meter height apply only to a hospital building within a building envelope that is 140 meters south of the rear lot line, 14.5 meters from the side lot lines, and 79 meters north of the front lot line. That the applicant obtain site plan approval from the town to address matters such as shadow impacts of the final building design, that the applicant obtain a work permit from the NPCA prior to any site alterations or development of subject lands relating to the 15 meter setback from the water course or with the small channel under the new hospital. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
Danielle?
Yes, I am moving.
And seconder?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Is there?
No.
All right, is there any, sorry, is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
Seeing none? All those in favor?
Nancy.
Aye for Dell.
Okay. The motion was made by Danielle, seconded by Dylan. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. That will conclude our meeting for tonight. There's a 20-day appeal period for this application. And thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.